varieties who protects these farmer varieties in India. Now, in India, we already know that India is a member of World Trade Organization. It has also signed trade-related aspects of intellectual property rights. Now, Article 27.3 of TRIPS requires all its member states. India is also a member state, so it requires all its member states to protect varieties either by a patent or by a sui generis system or by a combination of both. So India adopted for a sui generis system. It means it adopted for a new system for the protection of plant varieties. The Plant Variety Protection and Farmers Act 2001 is the act which governs the protection of plant varieties in India. It is an attempt by Indian government to recognize and protect the rights of both commercial plant breeders as well as farmers. Now, this has made a considerable improvement in conserving, improving, and making plant genetic resources available to farmers. Now, this intellectual property right granted under PPV and FR Act is basically a dual right. You get two rights. It's a dual right. Dual right. You get one right over the variety and another right over the denomination or the name assigned to that variety by the breeder. So it's a dual right. Now, there are certain objectives of PPV and FR Act. We'll study about those. The first objective is to establish an effective system for the protection of plant varieties. The Act was put forward so that plant varieties and rights of farmers, along with breeders' right, could be protected for the development of new plant varieties, for encouraging the development of new plant varieties. Now, to second objective is to recognize and protect the rights of farmers in respect to their contribution. See, farmers make a lot of efforts in their field. A lot of breeding work, a lot of crossing work is being done in field so that a new variety could become up. So farmers are making an effort. So these rights, basically their contribution is to be acknowledged. So one of the one of the objective of this act was to recognize and protect the rights of farmers. The third objective is to accelerate agricultural development in the country. See, when a person is rewarded for their intellectual effort, the person is rewarded for their hard work, they obviously get encouraged. They obviously accelerate the development. Now, protection of plants, breeders' right, and stimulate investment for research and development was another objective of this act. Now, this act also facilitates the growth of seed industry in the country as the farmers get protected, as the rights of farmers, as the rights of breeders and researchers get protected. They ensure that there is high availability of quality seed for other people as well. So, the PPV and FR Act 2000 work is categorized further into three types of right, like farmers' right, breeders' right, and researchers' right. The objective of this act was to set up a compelling framework for the insurance of plants and to privilege farmers and their reproducers. So, this act is further categorized as farmers' right, breeders' right, and researchers' right. We'll be learning more about this in the few lessons. Now, what are farmers' rights? Farmers' rights are basically the rights which are granted to farmer over the production or over the development of new plant variety or a plant variety which didn't existed in the past. Now, farmers' rights are of various types. It is categorized into other six forms, like farmers' right on seeds. Now, farmer who has developed a new variety shall be entitled to save, use, sow, and exchange their farm produce, including seed of protected variety. They are free to sell it, they are free to save it, they are free to use it, they are even free to exchange it for other items, they are even free to share it with other farmers. Now, second right is right to register for traditional varieties. The Indian PPV FR Act allows a farmer to register, to go and register their variety by their own. This third right is farmers' right for reward and the third right is farmers' right for reward and recognition. Now, the farmer's right consists of a right of a farmer to save, use, exchange, and sell farm saved seeds and propagating material. Now, for their right, they are recognized, they are rewarded, and they are also supported by the government to enhance the productivity. Now, the fourth right is farmer's right for protection against infringement. Now, what does this mean? If a farmer somehow proves before court that he or she was not aware that he or she is using a protected variety for the production, they are given a protection against infringement. They will not be charged by the government for un- they will not be charged by the government for unlawful infringement of other person's property. Now, the next one is right to compensation. When a farmer or a breeder produces a new variety, when a farmer or breeder has seeds of a new variety, they can sell it. They can sell their registered seed with full disclosure of their agronomic performance. And let's say a farmer had brought seeds from a company or from a breeder, and that seed is unable to perform better in field or is unable to perform at the expected level, then that farmer or then that breeder may claim compensation from the party from which they have bought the seeds. That is farmers right to compensation. Now the third one is last one is farmers right for receiving free services. Now farmers are exempted from any fee or any proceeding before the registrar or the authority. So there are six rights which a farmer has under farmers right of PPV and FRA. Next comes breeders' right. Now, breeders' right are somewhat similar to farmers' right. An exclusive right is provided to a breeder or his successor or the agent to produce, sell, distribute, and import or even export the new variety. The breeder may authorize any other person to sell and market and otherwise deal with the variety registered under this act. The next right is researchers' right. Now, what is researchers' right? Now, any researcher or any research scholar can use any of the registered variety under the Act for conducting research and experiment. The clause is that this would include the use of variety as an initial source of variety for the purpose of developing any other variety, not for selling, not for reproducing, not for exporting, and not for importing. A researcher can only use the registered variety under the Act for conducting experiments, and he or she must have authorization of the breeder of a registered variety if a repeated use is being done. Hello everyone, I am Bhavna Singh, working with Verispire Private Technologies Limited as a senior research associate, and I'll be taking this session on plant variety protection. So let's start. Now we all know what are intellectual properties. Intellectual property is basically creativeness or hello everyone. I am Bhavna Singh, working with Verispire Private Technologies Limited, and I'll be taking this session on plant variety rights. So let's start. Now we know what are intellectual properties. Intellectual property is basically creation or effort of human mind. When a person invents something using creativeness or intellect of his or her mind, it is called as intellectual property. These intellectual properties are protected by certain rights. These rights are granted to the inventor and called as intellectual property rights. Now, the intellectual property or the IP is further categorized into four major forms, that is, plant variety, industrial property, copyright, and traditional knowledge. Today, we'll be discussing about protection of plant varieties, especially in our country, in India. So, let's start. Now, before learning about plant variety protection, we all should know what are plant varieties. Now, the term species species is a familiar unit. We all know that it is a botanical classification. Like, for example, if I say I have many different species of fruits, that would include mangoes, apples, bananas, oranges, all sorts of fruit would be included in species of fruits. But when I say I have different variety of a fruit, of a particular fruit, that means I have a different grouping, I have a different variety, or I have a different genre of that particular fruit. Let's say I have different varieties of mangoes, I have different varieties of apples. So, a variety is basically a grouping of plants, a grouping within a single botanical taxon. Now, these varieties, these plant varieties, are basically protected by certain rights called as plant variety rights. Now, we all know that farmers or breeders need plants with particular characteristics and the plants which are adapted to special qualities of the environment. So, these plant varieties are further protected for their own benefit. Now, the next question arises, why plant variety rights? Plant variety rights are also known as plant breeders' rights. They are basically granted to the breeder of a new plant variety. Now, these are internationally recognized form of intellectual property, which is used to protect unique plant varieties, which gives breeder or a farmer an exclusive control over the propagating material along with harvested material. This propagating material would include seed, would include leaves, would include fruits of that plant. Now, new plant varieties with improved yield, high quality, and better resistance to pests need tremendous amount of efforts in the field. But the development of breeding program of certain species will also remove the threat for their survival. Now, the process of plant breeding is quite long. It takes years and years for a farmer to develop a variety. However, if you are just reproducing that variety, it is quite quick and easy. Now, plant breeders and farmers spend years in developing a new plant variety that could make a substantial economic investment of the country. Thus, it is quite important for us to develop an effective system so that these new varieties can be protected. Now, what is the purpose? What is the purpose behind PVR or plant variety right? We all know that plants are considered as a form of intellectual property. So, the application of PVR system is similar to that of other intellectual property rights system. It gives protection and stimulates further innovation in plant breeding. When a person is rewarded for their efforts, they obviously get encouraged to do much better, to do more better. So it simulates further innovation. It allows plant breeders to collect royalty, to collect money on the production and sale of their seeds. It supports access to quality of proven high performing seeds. That means if a plant breeder has developed some sort of new variety, let's say a plant breeder has developed a new type of wheat which is enriched with vitamin A, which is enriched with minerals and nutrients, that plant breeder had given tremendous amount of time. So when that person will be selling their seeds, they'll gain royalty, and the other person, the buyer, will have an access of a high proven variety, high quality variety seeds. Now it also gives owner an exclusive right to commercially use it, sell it, and direct the production similar to other intellectual properties. Now, the next question arises, what sort of varieties are protected? What sort of varieties are given rights for the protection? Now, farmers and growers. Now, the next question arises, what are protected plant varieties? Or we can say that what varieties are protected? Now, farmers and breeders need plants with a particular characteristics and the plants which are adapted to nature, which are adapted to their own cultivation process. Now, these varieties, the varieties which are given protection, are further categorized into five forms. Now, what are protected plant varieties, or what sort of varieties, or what sort of plant varieties are given protection? Now, farmers and breeders need plants with specific type of characters. Now, these plants should be adopted to their cultivation processes and adopt it to nature as well. Now, plant varieties are further categorized into five types. These are new varieties, extent varieties, farmers varieties, essentially derived varieties, and hybrid varieties. We'll be learning about these one by one. A new plant variety refers to previously known group of plants that are distinguished from other similar group of plants generation by generation. Now these are new plants which are not discovered in the wild, but they are a result, or they are a result of human efforts or human plant breeding. It has not been sold in market, or it has not been marketed for more than a year before the date of application. Such varieties are known as new plant varieties. For example, I could say a new type of vegetable, it could be new type of fruit, it could be new type of grain that could come into market. These are called as new varieties. The next is extent plant variety. Now, what are extent plant varieties? The varieties which are notified under Section 5 of Seed Act are called as extent plant varieties. Now, it could be a farmer variety, it could be a variety which people know about, it could be a variety which is already there in public domain. Now, extent varieties can be registered under this act it, if it confers the criteria of distinctiveness, uniformity, and stability. Now the next is farmers plant variety. Now farmers varieties are defined as varieties that are traditionally being cultivated and developed by farmers in their field, of varieties which are wild relative of any other variety which farmer has a common knowledge of. Let's say wheat, let's say rice, let's say millet or maize. These all varieties are cultivated by farmers in their field. So these are farmers varieties. Farmers already have a knowledge of them, and in case they cross them, or in case they genetically engineer them, or in case they breed them, these varieties would be a farmer variety. Now, the next is essentially derived varieties. Now, as the name suggests, these varieties are derived. These varieties are basically essentially derived from pre existing varieties. Now, what could be a mean of deriving these varieties? It could be via genetic engineering, it could be via mutation, it could be a tissue culture derivation. You can even back cross your varieties and call it an essentially derived variety. You could make a ploidy change. Example, for example, let's say say BT cotton. BT cotton was a variety of cotton only in which through genetic engineering a gene of a bacteria was inserted so that it could perform better in field, so that it could give a better pest resistance. So that was an essentially derived variety. Now, what are hybrid plant varieties? Let's say I have two parental lines. Let's say I have two parents, two set of parents. When I cross these parents, an F1 generation or a progeny or an offspring of plant will be what I'll be getting. So, the F1 generation, the resultant of crossing two different breeding lines, the originating cross or the first generation of that cross is called as a hybrid variety. Now the clause with hybrid variety is that you cannot save the seeds of hybrid variety. You have to make cross of parental lines every single time you want to grow them. So they differ from pure line of variety. However, if we talk about performance in the field, they are at a par, they are at an unexpected level. They are unexpectedly performing well in the field. So these are called as hybrid plant varieties. For example, recently a dwarf coconut variety was developed. You can see it in image also. So now we know what are plant varieties, we know what sort of varieties are given protection, we know what is the objective of protecting the variety. Now we'll learn about protection that is provided in our country. Now we know India is a member of WTO, that is World Trade Organization, and India has also signed the agreement on TRIPS, that is trade related aspects of intellectual property. Now An article in TRIPS requires its member states, requires India to protect plant varieties either by patent or by a sui generis system or by the combination of both. So India opted for a sui generis system. India opted for a new system, completely new system for the protection of its plant varieties. Now, for that system or under that system, the Plant Variety Protection and Farmers Act was given in 2001. It was an attempt by Indian government to recognize and protect the rights of both commercial plant breeders as well as farmers as per their contribution. Now, the contribution of farmers and plant breeders was made in conserving, improving, and making plant genetic resources available for the development of new plant varieties. This intellectual property right granted under PPV and FR Act is basically a dual right. Now, why do we call it a dual right? There's a specific reason for that. Now, when a PPV variety or when a plant variety is protected, it is given two rights. One right is over that particular variety. You can sell it, you can use it, you can sow it, you can export it, you can import it, or you can produce it. Okay, so that is one single right over that variety. The other right which a farmer or which a breeder gets is over the denomination of that variety. Now, what is denomination of variety? Now, denomination means name of that variety. No other person can use same name for their own variety if they are coming up with a new variety. Like, let's say, for example, Pusa or IARI has given a variety of basmati rice that was called as Pusa basmati. Now, I, as a farmer or I, as a breeder, cannot use Pusa basmati name for my particular variety. So, the denomination, so the name of that variety is also protected. Now, the next question arises, what are the objectives of this PPV and FR Act, which was given by Government of India? Now, the first and the foremost objective of this act is to establish an effective system for the protection of plant varieties. The rights of farmers, the rights of plant breeders were to be protected so that they are encouraged for the development of new varieties. Now, the second is to recognize and protect the rights of farmers with respect to their contribution. The third is to accelerate agricultural development in the country. We all know that India is agriculture based country. We grow on our land, we export it, we sometimes import it also, but India is basically an agriculture based country. So to accelerate the agricultural development, to protect the plant breeders right, to stimulate the investment for research and development of plant breeding, for the research and development of new plant species or new plant varieties, this act was given. Now, the fourth objective was to facilitate the growth of seed industry so that we are assured that we already have a backup of high proven quality seeds or high performing quality seeds, right? So this PPP and FR Act is basically a setup or was basically set up for compelling, for making a framework for the insurance or protection of plant varieties so that farmers and breeders or reproducers could get a privilege from it. Now this act is further categorized into some rights. These are called as farmers right, breeders right, and researchers right. We'll learn about it. Now, the first is farmers' right. We all know the rights given to farmers over their contribution for a new plant variety are called as farmers' right, but it is further divided, it is further categorized. The first one is farmers' right on seed. Let's say a farmer has developed a new plant variety. Now, that farmer is entitled to save his plant, save the seeds, use the seeds, exchange the seeds, share the seeds, and he or she could sell those seeds to produce new offsprings of protected plant varieties. The second one is right to register traditional varieties. Now, According to Indian PPV and FR Act, it allows farmers to go and register for their new plant variety by their own. They can go to the office and they can register by their own. Now, the third one is farmers' right for reward and recognition. When a farmer or a breeder is continuously putting efforts, when a farmer or breeder is putting efforts in field in breeding new plants and varieties, their effort should be rewarded, their effort should be recognized, and they should be supported. So various schemes have been launched by government for supporting, recognizing, and rewarding the farmers for their efforts. Now, the fourth one is farmers' right for protection against infringement. Now, this is an important one. This means if a farmer has mistakenly used seeds or product of a company or from a breeder, he or she didn't know that it is a protected variety. He or she didn't know that he or she cannot use it. So that farmer, if can somehow prove before the court that he or she was not aware that it is a protected variety, that he or she is infringing the right of any other breeder or a farmer, they they will not be charged by the government. They will be protected against this infringement if somehow they prove that they didn't know. Now the next is right to compensation. Registered seeds must be sold with full disclosure. For example, let's say I am a breeder. I made a new plant variety seeds. Now, when I'm selling those seeds, I should make a proper disclosure of how that seed should be used. Let's say my seed has to be treated with water or some other chemical before putting it into the soil. So I have to make a complete disclosure. I have to make a complete agronomic disclosure about it, that like this or in this way or in this specific method my seed should be sown in the soil. So if when such seeds are sold to a farmer and the seed is unable to perform in an expected level, or it is unable to perform under the recommended method, so that farmer will be able to pay. The next right is right to compensation. When, let's say I'm a breeder, let's say I'm a farmer, now I have developed a new variety, now I want to sell the seeds of that new variety. When I am selling a registered seed, a full disclosure of its agronomic performance should be made. Like, for example, my seed has to be washed or has to be treated with a certain type of chemical, so I have to give full disclosure of it. Like, before sowing my seed has to be treated with XYZ chemical. And if any farmer who has brought that seed is unable to get expected performance under the recommended condition, that farmer or that breeder could ask for a compensation from me. So farmer have a right to compensation in the events if a farmer is unable to claim the performance of new variety. The next is farmers' right for receiving fee services. Now, any farmer is exempted from any sort of fee in any sort of proceeding before registrar or any other authority. Let's say it's a case against infringement, or it's a compensatory, or it's any other sort of proceeding before an authority, they are exempted from any type of fee. Now the next is breeders' right. Breeders' right are also similar to farmers' right. What all rights a farmer gets, breeders also get. Breeders have an exclusive right for to producing. The next is breeders' right. Breeders have same rights, or I should say similar rights as farmers, an exclusive right on the breeder or his successor or his agent to produce, sell, distribute, import, or export the variety. A breeder may also authorize any person to produce, sell, market, deal with the variety which are registered under this act. Now, the third right, or an important right, is researchers' right. A researcher can use any of the registered variety under this act, but the clause is there. The variety should be used for conducting experiment or for conducting research. It should not be used for any commercial purpose. This would include the use of variety as an initial source of variety for the purpose of developing a new variety. Let's say I am a researcher and I want to develop a new variety. I would take a proper authorization from the breeder, or I would take a proper authorization from the farmer so that I could use it in conducting experiments or in conducting research or for the development of new variety. But if I want to repeatedly use it, if I want to repeatedly use it for next few years or for next few months, I should take a proper authorization from that breeder, so that, which should say that repeated use of parental lines is not for commercial production. Now, when we are protecting our plants, there are certain criteria. We know that if we are protecting an invention, there is three criteria that is to be followed. One is novelty, the other one is industrial application, the third one is inventiveness. The similar criteria are to be followed by plant protection, or similar criteria are seen when we are protecting plants under PPV and FRR. No, so plant genetic diversity is important for farming other than environmental factors. So there are certain criteria which are filled for the plant protection, which is novelty, distinctiveness, uniformity, and stability. Now, what is novel? If at the date of filing, an application for registration of protection of the propagating material of such variety has not been sold or disposed of earlier in India, there are certain criteria to be fulfilled for plant protection. Let's say, let's take a case of a patent or an invention. When there is an invention, to patent it, we have to fulfill three criteria, that is novelty, the other one is inventiveness, and the third one is industrial application. So similar is the case for plant protection. If we are protecting plants, we have to fulfill some certain criteria, like for example novelty, distinctiveness, uniformity, stability, and denomination. So what is novel? Novel, the concept of novelty is similar to that of patent. It should not have been disclosed or disposed an year earlier in India or outside India. The plant variety should be new. It should not have been marketed, it should not have been sold, or it should not have been disposed in India or any other country or outside India. Then only that plant variety would be treated as new. The second criteria is distinctiveness or distinct. A variety is said to be distinct if it is distinguishable or if it is different from one essential character from any other variety whose existence is already known. Let's say I have developed a maize variety. Now, what is so new in that maize variety? What is so different in that maize variety? Maize varieties are already developing in India. Now, I would say I have developed a maize variety which has 90% sweetness. Okay, so that is something different. If I say I have developed a maize variety which has more vitamin A content as compared to other varieties. So that is different. So it is the distinctiveness criteria that a plant variety should fulfill. Now the third one is uniformity. A variety is said to be uniform if there is no variation in that particular character from generation to generation. Let's say the essential character is content of vitamin in maize variety, but as we move forward or as we grow that maize plant, the content of vitamin diminishes. So it is not uniform. It is not uniform from generation to generation, or it is not stable from generation to generation. It needs to be stable. It needs to be same as the one which I had registered. Okay. The next criteria is stability. A variety is said to be stable if its essential character remain unchanged after repeated propagation. Let's say I am repeatedly crossing my plants. I'm repeatedly making back crosses. I'm repeatedly making progenies. I'm repeatedly using that seed material. But the content of vitamin stays the same. But the other features like grain yield, like girth of the corn, everything remains same, then only that variety would be considered as stable. And the next is fifth one is denomination. Now, what is denomination? Denomination is basically the name of that variety. Let's say I have developed a rose variety and I want to name it as gulab. I cannot do that. I have to pick up a denomination. I have to pick up a new name for it. Let's say I want to name it Pusa Basmati. No, I cannot do that because there's already a crop which has a name Pusa Basmati to it. But I could name it something like XYZ or Madhubala. I could name it Bejanti Mala. I could give it any other name. There are a number of rose varieties. Okay, so denomination or nomenclature of that variety is also important. So, a very important question now arises. We have completed what sort of plant varieties are to be protected. What are the rights which are given to the farmers or to the breeders? We also know that there is something called as researchers' right, in which researchers are exempted for any other charges. They can use the plant variety, they can use new plant variety for their for conducting experiments, for conducting research. Now, who can apply for it? Who as a person could apply it? The application for the registration of a variety can be made by any person. When I say any person, what does that mean? Any person who claims to be the breeder of that variety can go and file the application. Any successor of the breeder of that variety. Let's say I am unable to file a application, but my successor is able to file the application, so that person is okay. Any person which is an assignee of the breeder, I could assign a person to go and file the application for me if I'm not comfortable in going. So basically any person which is related to breeder or a farmer, or the farmer or breeder himself, can go and file the application for plant variety protection. Thank you, everyone.